Welcome to A Reel of One's Own. My name is Andrea Thompson, and I'm the producer of this show. The things you will hear over the next about an hour represent the views of me, A Reel of One's Own, and the people making them. All opinions and quotations in no way represent Midwest Radio and are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues from the content of this program. And once again, more informal. Hello, I'm Andrea Thompson. This is A Reel of One's Own. Once again, it is just going to be reviews today. I know, weep with relief as you know that you are going to be able to listen to me for the next hour. All right, well, first off, I was only able to see one of the movies that was opening today, sadly enough, so I want to start with that rather than going in alphabetical order like I generally do. And the one that I saw today was called Wreck-It Ralph. Well, basically because this weekend, for personal reasons, I felt like I really needed something lighthearted, and I got everything I expected to get and more. Now, this movie actually takes place in an arcade where a character named Wreck-It Ralph kind of starts out narrating the story of his life. Well, basically, he's the villain of the arcade game Fix-It Felix Jr. Basically, it's a 30-year-old game. Ralph smashes the building in the game. Felix fixes it and gets a medal, and at the end, the residents of the building throw Ralph off the balcony at the end. And when the arcade closes, the characters are then able to go about their daily lives, and Ralph doesn't have it so good in real life either. He recognizes the benefits of his game lasting for 30 years, but the other residents of the game shun him even when the game ends and worship Felix, of course, and Ralph happens to live in a dump outside the building, so not so fun. And when Ralph tries to attend the 30th anniversary party, it doesn't go so well. He ends up deciding to leave his game and try to enter another game where he actually stands a chance of winning a medal to prove he doesn't have to always be the bad guy. So Ralph ends up in a game called Hero's Duty, a first-person shooter game that's kind of like a composite of all of them. And basically the aim is to destroy all the bug-like enemies in the game and ta-da, win a medal. So Ralph actually gets the medal, but unfortunately in the process he crashes into another game called Sugar Rush, and he inadvertently brings one of the Cybugs from the other game with him. While he thinks it died in the crash, it might not be as easy as that, it turns out. And meanwhile, back at Ralph's game, Fix-It Felix Jr., his absence definitely does not go unnoticed. And well, when the players notice Ralph is missing from the game, the owner of the game believes that the game is malfunctioning, of course, the game is placed out of order, and that may lead to the game being unplugged. And if that happens, that will leave all the game's residents homeless. So Felix, the hero of the game, decides to find Ralph, and he teams up with one of the leaders from Hero's Duty called Calhoun, and she is hilariously played by Jane Lynch, who many know as Sue Sylvester on Glee. So they definitely make an odd but very sweet pairing. It's hilarious to watch. And anyway, Ralph ends up, and sort of the other guys, Calhoun and Felix, looking for him. They end up in this other arcade game called Sugar Rush. It's a candy kart racing game. And then Ralph then runs into the best character in the movie, Vanellope von Schweetz, voiced to perfection by Sarah Silverman. And basically, Vanellope, who then, of course, is going to serve as the resident's sidekick, basically finds his medal and decides to use it to enter in a go-kart race so she can prove herself as a racer. And apparently she'll win the medal back if she wins. So of course, Vanellope and Ralph decide to work together so they can both kind of get what they want. And unfortunately, and a little predictably, admittedly, the other racers and characters don't really want her in the race, saying she's basically a glitch and not really part of the game, and that her glitchiness basically might even cause an accident and hurt the other characters in the race. And I have to say, Vanellope is one of the best sidekicks I have ever seen. She's right up there with Dory from Finding Nemo. Will also make her completely unique, annoying but not too annoying, and unique without being pretentious, and just so funny without being over the top. She is great. One of the Yeah, really, one of the best sidekick characters I've ever seen, like I said. And of course, here you kind of learn the same lessons that you've seen in other games, but this movie is just so enjoyable thanks to everything going so perfectly, the right writing, the right voice acting. You kind of forget that. And of course, Ralph eventually really does make a huge mess of things and he has to go out and set things right. But, unlike other movies, pardon me for a sec. Unlike other movies where you can kind of see he's making a really dumb decision that you might never do. When he really screws things up, you you can kind of see why he's doing it, and maybe even think I would have done the same thing. And when he screws things up, he does it out of the best of motives most of the time. And this movie is charming, smart, funny for both their kids and their parents, and it also doesn't take itself too seriously or get too cheesy, like even during the really cheesy type moments. And another and the last reason I love this movie so much is because when I saw Wreck-It Ralph, I was in a theater full of children. And if you've ever been in a theater full of children, you gotta laugh because well they act like kids basically. And but in this theater there was almost no talking, which was kind of a miracle in itself because and both the adults and the kids were laughing. So I was in a theater watching a kids movie and almost no talking. Like I said, I had to say that again because that is still such an impressive thing for me with kids short attention spans and all. And and it's always nice to see adults in a kid movie not wanting to shoot themselves in the head. It's really nice. And one more thing, it actually had a plot twist that was an actual surprise, and I didn't see it coming from a mile away like I usually do. So that was a really fun thing. So all in all, it's a really great movie to see. The kids will enjoy it, the parents will enjoy it. Everyone will have a good time in this theater. So A plus, go see it. Cause who could use a nice movie that'll make you laugh and isn't without being stupid. Okay, past movies I've seen. Cloud Atlas. Brace yourself for this one because this is such a huge ambitious movie. I'm probably gonna be talking about it for a little bit longer than usual. Oh, and another warning, if you see this movie, make sure you go to the bathroom first since it's about 2 hours and 44 minutes long. Almost 3 hours long. So I'm not quite sure how to describe it, so I'll just go with the official synopsis. Cloud Atlas is an exploration of how the actions of individual lives impact one another in the past, present, and future, as one soul is shaped from a killer into a hero, and an act of kindness ripples across centuries to inspire a revolution. Think about that for a minute. Now, if you're going, what? I hear you. So just bear with me and I'll try to explain. This film is kind of consists of 6 related stories and it kind of jumps from story to story throughout the film. And they take place in various countries and times, ranging from the 1800s to a distant post apocalyptic future. And each of these story arcs are somewhat related and feature some of the same actors, with some of them changing genders and even races over time, over different stories. Now, one of these stories the earliest takes place in 1800s aboard a ship where a young man agrees to hide an escaped slave and everything that results from that. Another takes place in England and Scotland in the 30s as a penniless young man composes a piece of music called the Cloud Atlas Sextet. And yet another one takes place in California in 1973 where a journalist named Larissa Ray, she ends up trying to expose a conspiracy about a nuclear reactor. And of course, the people invested in the reactor and the plans surrounding it don't like this, so they decide to send a hired hitman after her and the people helping her. And just when you thought everything was gonna be so deadly serious, the fourth actually takes place in the UK in the present day. And it's about an elderly publisher that's forced to flee London and ends up confined against his will in a nursing home, and he and he and he of course and his attempts to escape. And this is a very, very hilarious story that provides some much needed comic relief. And the fifth takes place in the distant future in Korea and is about a clone server at a restaurant who decides to rebel against the society that has exploited her and her kind. And last but by no means least, this is the last story, and it takes place on the Hawaiian island in a distant post-apocalyptic future. And in this future, it appears that most of mankind has died, and the focus is on a tribesman named Zachary, played by Tom Hanks, who leads a kind of a primitive life alongside the last of this technologically advanced society called the Prescients. Whew, hope I didn't say that too fast. Have you got all that? I hope so, but because can't really slow down. And if you're looking for a strong link between each of these stories that's clearly spelled out, the movie's not interested in that. It's not interested in making things easy for you. It's really an ambitious movie that asks you to work, and obviously I feel that's a huge risk to be taken. But I found the film very enjoyable. You might have to view it a couple times. And what the common theme seems to be is portraying people who desire to serve the kind of cause of human freedom and pay any price to do it, which obviously is a cause I can get behind, and maybe they make you work a bit too much, but hey, subtlety is an old foe of mine, as you may have noticed. But it is a very good movie, Cloud Atlas. It might make you feel a little lost, so again, it might require multiple viewings, but at almost 3 hours long, I'm not sure I can take that. So while I did enjoy it, I honestly just wish they'd been a little clearer. But from what I've heard, the novel is based on was supposed to be unfilmable, so it's quite an achievement just to have it be as good as I is. So I think I would rate it a solid B+. And next. After Cloud Atlas, you'll probably be thinking any film I review after that will be a huge letdown, and you know what? You're absolutely correct, because the next one that I'm going to review is Silent Hill Revelation. Now, I never played the video game, but I did see the first Silent Hill, and I can't speak to how faithful or how good it is compared to the video game, so I'm just going to go on the movies, and I honestly found almost nothing almost no reason to really watch it and waste your time on this. I mean, the images of the scary characters are all that's going for it, and even that's not really impressive because they probably got a lot of those scary, creative video game villain images from the video game. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's go into the sad excuse for a plot. The story centers on the girl from the first game, Sharon, now 18, who is on the run with her father, Christopher, so both of them are constantly on the move and taking new identities. And apparently, since the last film, Sharon's mother, Rose, managed to get her daughter out, but unfortunately, she was still trapped in Silent Hill, and Sharon doesn't remember any of this. She thinks her mother died in a car accident, but surprise, surprise, is still haunted by memories of a place called Silent Hill while she's asleep and awake. And when Sharon's father, Christopher, is taken, she decides to go into Silent Hill to find him, despite repeated warnings to stay away, of course. And the rest of the movie is pretty much spelled out before she even gets to Silent Hill to find him. And they pretty much recap what we already know, you know? There's no new information, it seems to warrant a sequel, so that, for example, that Sharon is actually the good half of Alessa. Yeah, I knew that. And Alessa is a result of an evil cult trying to burn her to death. And yeah, I knew that from the first film. And a little more is revealed about the events surrounding it, but they don't really make that much of a difference. They don't spell out really any new revelations. And oh, when Sharon's love interest turns out to be not what he seems, and that I saw coming from a everybody could pretty much see coming from a mile away. So Silent Hill itself, I am pretty easy to scare in the theater, even if I know the movie is crappy. So when I'm not reaching for someone's hand and stuff, that means you've really failed on that front. Because like I said, I'm easy in that department. So um, yeah, there's really almost no jump moments where you've been creeped out really or scared, and Sharon managed to avoid the traps pretty easily. And again, some of the imagery, is nice, but that's it. And like I said earlier, it's probably not very original since they probably could have just gotten from the games. I guess there could have been something different, you know. Different if the actress playing Sharon could have kind of pulled you in or kind of had some sort of presence or charisma, but honestly I felt like almost any actress could have played this part, and that the actress playing Sharon really failed to be engaging. But honestly, with a script like this, it was entirely her fault. I mean, same with pretty much everyone else, the love interest and everything, and they were just both so bland. And again, not really their fault. They just didn't really have much to work with. And even the showdowns were boring. When Sharon met Alessa, this could have been a poignant moment, very confrontational, something you could take seriously, but even that was boring. And the showdown with the leader of the cult wasn't really anything to write home about either. So yeah, pretty much a huge letdown on every front. Nothing really engaging or interesting, and the creepy visuals they probably got from the game, so does it really count? So I cannot really think of of really any reason to watch it. So congratulations, audience. This is my first F grading, because yeah, this is do not bother do not bother seeing it. If you really want to be scared in the theater, Sinister would do good for you good for you for that. And now since I couldn't get to the movies opening this week, and I'm going to let you know what's in store for you if you decide to save a little cash and go to the budget theater. And first up in that department is the movie Brave. And this is another offering from Pixar, and it's actually pretty interesting because it's their take on the princess genre of movies. And if anyone can revamp this genre, give it a new twist, it's Pixar. And they actually took quite a few risks with this one because, for one, a lot of the staples of the genre aren't here. There's no talking animal sidekick, really. There's actually no villain, just people that make mistakes. And most risky of all, there's a princess here with no love interest. It's similar to Finding Nemo in that it's a focus on the mother-daughter. Nemo was a focus on the parent-child relationships, and this one is really a focus on mother-daughter relationships. So a tribute to that. And like I said, it's actually a pretty realistic portrayal of a mother and daughter who have drifted apart and can't really relate to each other anymore, even though they want to. And it's not any fault of their own, but simply through, growing up, misunderstanding. And it basically, our princess here is a teenage Scottish princess, Merida, who yearns for more freedom than tradition allows her, but feels held back by her mother especially. So Merida ends up meeting a witch and telling the witch she wants to change her fate. And to do that, she decides to ask for a spell to try and change her mother so she can change her fate. And yeah, whatever could go wrong in this scenario, right? So shockingly, a lot does go wrong, and the rest of the movie sees her trying to undo her mistake and set things right. And of course, this is complicated by the fact that the other clans have come to visit and may actually, they're at a danger of going to war if anything does go too wrong particularly when tradition demands that Merida marry one of the other clan's sons. So, again, I felt like this was a really good movie, really fun, really interesting, but and a really good tribute and celebration of the mother-daughter bond, but it feels incomplete because, again, I'm gonna run a comparison to Finding Nemo. What made that great was Nemo and his son, excuse me, Nemo and his father Marlin. They go through an emotional journey as they become closer, but they also go through a physical one, which helps them do that. And in Brave, Merida and her mother go through that emotional journey, but the physical journey is missing. So I felt like not enough happened, and Merida didn't really get to show her skills in fighting, archery, and horseback riding, really. So while the film is enjoyable, it's just not great. Like I said, the emotional journey was there, but the physical was not, and that felt like there just wasn't enough happening. So B minus. And the next one, well, turns out The Dark Knight Rises is still at the budget theater, and I know, enough has been said about this movie, and more probably doesn't need to be said, but I was never one to acknowledge any irrelevance on my part. And first off, if you missed it, shame on you. And that said, I have to admit, I was really not a big fan of this. Shocking, I know. But please bear with me, because there's a good reason why. And the problem with The Dark Knight Rises, I felt, kind of ironically, it stems from the standards that it's set with the previous movies, especially the second film, The Dark Knight. And this means that The Dark Knight Rises would be really great if it weren't for the first two films. So it's and the latest one, it really has, The Dark Knight Rises, I mean, it has some great characters, great acting, and an intense but not quite good enough story that will draw you in, but it just isn't enough to kind of surpass The Dark Knight, just isn't better. And I feel like The Dark Knight will always remain the best of the trilogy, and it's not often that the middle film has that honor. So, and one could say that kind of Batman has the same problem in The Dark Knight Rises. He's basically been undone by his victory in the previous film. So anyway, the movie opens 8 years after the previous film, and Bruce Wayne is still emotionally and physically wounded from these events and has become a recluse. And it doesn't help that Gotham has been enjoying a very much needed peace since that time that has also made Batman irrelevant. And of course, that peace comes to a crashing halt when Bane comes to town, played by a really good and almost unrecognizable Tom Hardy. He's just a joy to watch, and you really believe that he could wreak so much havoc with Batman and Bruce Wayne and reduce them both to almost nothing. So, and he's a lot like the Joker in the previous film, in that he represents chaos. But the Joker kind of represented, his chaos was random, meaningless anarchy, and Bane kind of presents the kind of rigid, planned, very fascist type of chaos that is right at home in the failed city-state where only the strong and ruthless can prevail, and one that he makes, which is pretty much what he makes Gotham into. And of course, the supporting talent is always a joy. Gary Oldman is still amazing as Gordon, and he's sacrificed almost everything to save Gotham. And Anne Hathaway, she is amazing as Catwoman, and she really reminds you that she's the same actress that really shone and drew you in Rachel Getting Married, and she really gets to strut her stuff here and just be amazing and be playful, conniving, sexy but not trashy, and she has just enough of a conscience to make you a little doubtful about what she'll do next. And of course, Joseph Gordon-Levitt he's very enjoyable as a rookie cop who may be the tipping point in the battle for Gotham. And I have to say, the filmmakers, they really do a very good job at imagining every worst case scenario of our time to basically throw at Gotham. In one film, we have a nuclear explosion, fascism, anarchy, and other little fun surprises that basically, it's the worst nightmares of the 20th century. Basically from your nightmare scenario, the worst case scenario. But like I said, if I've spoken very warmly of the film up till now, so now I have to get to the problems. And I know this is a comic book movie, but this franchise has taken great pains to make Batman relatable and believable. You believe that it could happen, all this stuff could happen in the real world. That's what they did. And so apparently there's hardly any crime after the events of The Dark Knight? That's weird. And some of the villains' motives are questionable and they don't really make a lot of sense. Like their goal is to wait a few months, then destroy the city? And that kind of makes some of the scenes that should be uplifting and cinematic fall flat. And also when this really intense moment happens with one of the villains, I want to say no. The biggest problem was one of the villains. I did not believe you. I don't believe you are this powerful villain. I don't believe you're this powerful villain that would take such a ridiculously circuitous route for revenge. I just don't believe it. And I did not believe that this villain looked basically like they weren't up to the task. They could not possibly have been able to cause this much chaos. They just didn't look at her have the power or the punch, you know? So, again, that felt really flat for me because I've never felt that way about a Batman villain. And it doesn't help that neither Bruce or Alfred are really that sympathetic. I mean, watching this movie after 8 years of Bruce Wayne moping around in his mansion, I just wanted to tell him, you know what? Suck it up already. You know, you're sitting in your mansion feeling sorry for yourself. You're letting your charities go to waste. You know, you're letting everything fall apart. I just wanted to say, you know, just suck it up already and stop feeling sorry for yourself. And then when Alfred argues with him, you keep thinking these are the same issues that they worked out in the first movie. And they really should have gotten past all these things. And when Bruce Wayne is in prison, he does seem to get out and get back to the city rather quickly and easily. And I'm thinking, really? No one else would have figured out how to get out of that prison that way? No one else would have figured that out? And how did that person figure out he was Batman? And just too many problems. But anyway, but yet I still, when I reviewed it previously for Patch.com, not trying to sell anything, swear, I gave it a B+. So you might ask, if this movie kind of turned me off so much, why am I so inclined to look so favorably on it? Well, one of the reasons is what it gets right, it really gets right. The effects and action sequences are amazing, and even though I didn't really feel much during the big climactic moment where Bruce Wayne gets out of jail, the characters of Bane and Catwoman are very watchable, and so is the finale. But the main reason the movie isn't up to par can be summed up in one reason, and that's Heath Ledger. Basically, his portrayal as the Joker, it embodies every single quality that could have saved this movie. It could have added a much-needed personal touch, as well as serving as a fascinating and enjoyable contrast to the kind of anarchy that Bane represented and that I mentioned before. And I could have really felt the film from sinking like it did into this self-importance. And so I really gave this film high marks. It's probably the best movie they could have had without Heath Ledger. And his absence from The Dark Knight Rises is obviously no one's fault. It's a very tragic example of a promising life and career cut short. And his performance, you know, was so essential to the previous movie that it felt slow and empty without him on screen, basically. So, yeah, that's basically why I would still kind of think highly of this movie, even though there were so many problems. I just wish they could have just kind of moved Batman forward instead of rehashing so much material from the first film. You know, we didn't need more backstory and old villains like like the League of Shadows. We needed a new idea for a finale like this. Okay, and I have finished ranting about The Dark Knight Rises. Pardon me. Next up is Hope Springs. Now, I know this is unprofessional, but have to I have to get this out of the way. Old people having sex. Gross, gross, gross. Okay, I'm sorry for that, but Brad Pitt and Angelina and Mr. and Mrs. Smith? Yes, we will watch that, but there's a reason the rest of us have sex with the lights off. Okay, now that that's out of the way, I can go back to pretending I'm not a horrible, superficial human being. So anyway, we got some great talent in Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones, who play Kay and Arnold, an elderly couple who have kind of become estranged over the years, and not in a fighting, hurtful sort of way, really, but just kind of they're stuck in this routine. And they've also stopped having sex, and no one really seems to be the villain. It's just a series of events that kind of just culminated, and they've allowed to kind of drive them apart. And Arnold really doesn't seem to feel this much, but Kay particularly feels like she needs to kind of get the spark back in their marriage, so she basically persuades her husband, Arnold, to attend a week of marriage counseling with Dr. Feld, who is very well played by Steve Carell and who takes their problems very seriously and very professionally. You feel like he could be a real therapist here. And Kay and Arnold, when they attend these sessions, they do make realistic progress from one session to another as they kind of sit closer and drift apart, and they try to revitalize their marriage by actually talking frankly about their feelings and sex, which they're really not used to. However, it does actually show that this therapist is not a miracle worker, and they have to do most of the work themselves, both at the sessions and when they get home. And not everything goes as planned, as kind of Arnold and Kay really struggle to kind of reconnect and keep their love and marriage alive in general. And I really like this movie because you so rarely see something like this. You know, this movie about older people where they're not kind of, you know, the same wise elderly characters, but really deal realistically and frankly about their lives, let alone show them being intimate with each other on screen. That really shouldn't be too radical, but let's face it, it is. And honestly, I can honestly see why, because when I was in the theater, you know, me and my boyfriend were kind of the youngest people in the theater, and so here's hoping that more movies like this will attract more viewers than it seems like they do. And I could be wrong. Maybe they attract all kinds of viewers already, because really, like, I really like this trend about, you know, about older of this bunch of movies that really focus on the elderly as real people. So anyway, yeah, definitely go and see it. I would rate it in B plus A minus range, probably closer to an A minus, because like I said, the premise of focusing on older people as people should be too radical, but it is. And again, that is really not the way it should be, but anyway, enough about that. So definitely, if you are in the area where the budget theaters are, see this movie, and you'll not be disappointed, although admittedly it might make you. Anyway, I don't want to see it. All right, next up, I do believe this is still playing in the theaters, is Paranorman. Now, this one I really found to be a really great one, because you can always tell. You know, it's always nice to see when basically filmmakers don't look down on kids. Like, this movie is dark. It has some really dark humor in it, and it is funny. They really use the darkness as kind of, an opportunity to get really funny and stuff. And I always like when movies realize that kids really can handle it, They can handle the dark stuff. They're not delicate, and okay, this is going to start me on a rant, but really look at the old fairy tales. They can clearly handle their stuff. A lot of fairy tales are not nearly as pretty as we made them out to be. But anyway, Paranorman is basically about this kid who can see dead people. And because of that, he's really mocked, terrorized, and pushed around at school quite a bit. And his home life isn't much better. His family just doesn't understand them, especially when, he says he thinks he can see his grandmother on the couch. Who died previously. So, so yeah, basically he lives in this town that attracts a lot of its tourism from basically this witch that they burned centuries earlier, and he finds out that basically he has become the key to keeping this witch from rising. Every year he kind of has to read from this book to keep this witch from rising, and unfortunately when he starts failing, only he has the ability to basically save the town and save and its people basically. And what ends up happening is when these dead do rise, we've seen this before, that you shouldn't fear something because it's different. You shouldn't, different people shouldn't be persecuted, but this movie really, really does it I've said this before, it does it in a way that you feel like you're seeing it from these same old lessons for the first time. And when he finds out the history of like this witch, it's actually really poignant, really tender moment where this encounter and how the townspeople, how this story, rather than being about the monsters, it ends up being about the people of his town and what happened. So, and like I said, it's a really scary, really bloody twist that is really impressive. And like I said, I always like when the filmmakers do realize that this is actually something kids can handle. So, and last but not least, so basically Soliday, go see it. It's really excellent and much better than another stop motion film called Frankenweenie, which I didn't particularly like, and I've already discussed that, so I don't really go into it. And last but not least is Ted, Seth MacFarlane's first feature that features a talking teddy bear. And this one will always be memorable to me because I saw Ted on the same weekend that I saw Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And believe it or not, Ted actually had more suspense and got you more invested than Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter. That's right. Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter was actually more boring than a movie about a talking teddy bear. So anyway, I'll leave that rant aside because I don't want to become that crazy woman on the radio. I'm sorry. This is how great this movie is. Even thinking about this movie is making me laugh because it really starts out with some really great narration by Patrick Stewart, and that is just, it's Patrick Stewart. So when even him saying certain things is funny. Anyways. So yeah, it kind of shows how Ted kind of came to life as this talking teddy bear, and how he got famous, and this really great friendship between him and the Mark Wahlberg character. Really, really fun stuff. And basically, it showed how basically it really addresses all the things that you would think about a teddy bear, like basically an adult man in a teddy bear's body. They really explore like what had happened if this teddy bear actually acted like a person and kind of had urges, and 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 a stone teddy bear. Have you ever seen a stone teddy bear? Well, you're going to in this movie. And what ends up what ends up happening, like their favorite movie is Flash Gordon, and the guy from Flash Gordon actually makes an appearance, a cameo in this movie, and it is really fun. It is really fun. So, and and it actually makes a nod and explains things that other movies don't bother to explain, like why this Mark Wahlberg guy would have this hot girlfriend who makes a lot of money while he was stuck in this dead-end job. Why that would happen, like how he would get her, how they met, and why she would stick around. It explains that. It acknowledges that. And also acknowledges like the problems like that this friendship could cause and how it could kind of hold them both back as they got older. And while it has some of the elements of other movies, it just really either doesn't use them or it explores them in a new way, which I really like. It explains that this guy, Mark Wahlberg, is really responsible, basically, for his own actions. It doesn't really try and shift the blame to, like, the teddy bear. They really treat this, like I said, they really treat this as a really human thing. Like, it just shows with good writing, you can make almost anything believable. And since this movie makes a talking teddy bear really relatable, funny, heartfelt, suspenseful, like when he gets into danger, when an obsessed fan starts stalking him, you really get anxious for him. You really feel like the pain that these guys go through when they are separated and when they both try and live separately. So basically, see this movie. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's suspenseful, and more suspenseful than Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Sorry. Breathing. So yeah, definitely a movie worth seeing. And I'm about at the end, so I'm going to have to wrap up. And before I do, I'd like to throw a proposal out to my audience. First, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. And second of all, obviously I'm really into local film, like the smaller stuff. And if you know a local film or a smaller film that you feel like has not gotten near enough press, please let me know. You can Twitter me or email me or find me on Facebook. My email is areelofonezone@gmail.com. That is all one word. areelofonezone@gmail.com, and my Twitter name is also areelofonezone, no spaces or anything, all one word. Or if you're a filmmaker and you want me to review your film, I would love to review it on air. If you want to come for an interview, I would also love to have you on here and talk. And never fear, even if you think your film isn't that good, I will probably go a lot easier on it than I normally would on the films I've been talking about on this show, who have studio backing and access to all sorts of research. The reason I love smaller films is, like I said, they're generally a labor of love and made with very, very few money, obviously very little money, with people that, aren't paid a lot, so they're just there to love film. So, like I said, if you know of any good film screening that you think I might not know about, or you think there's a film I should really review or anything, like I said, email me. I would love to hear from you. And that is about all the time I have for today. So once again, thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday night.